Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Doug Jury at Zadara Storage, and we're going to go ahead and let a few more people find their seats. People are still filing into the virtual training here, so just go ahead and take a seat, grab a fresh cup of coffee or an iced tea, and we'll be right back with you. Thank you so much for joining. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Zadara and Kellen webinar this afternoon and this morning, depending on what time zone you're in. We're going to let people find their seats, going to let them basically trickle in one more minute to the top of the hour. I do like to start these right on time, so I'm sensitive to your calendar as well. We're going to have a really fun-filled hour here. I've got Ryan Lake on. He can introduce himself in just a moment. And so we got a couple of polling questions. We've got some use cases. We've got a lot of things going on for you today in this quick 1 hour session. So I'm going to go ahead and wait for the last few people to trickle in, and we'll be right back with you. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're ready to go. It is the top of the hour. Again, I'm Doug Jury from Zadara, and we also have Ryan Lake on. So what I'm going to do is just bring up this intro slide. Ryan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ryan Lake. I'm the CTO with Kellen Technologies, and we're a small services firm focusing on delivery of on-prem and cloud-based service infrastructure for primarily federal customers.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you for that. And I'm Doug Jury. I'm the Vice President of Partner Marketing. You might have heard me on other sessions. I've recorded quite a few of them. And if you'd like to reach out to Zadara and go under resources and webinars, you can find some of these pre-recorded sessions as well. So thank you so much for joining. Today's topic is all about finding your compute and storage as a service, building edges, being able to augment your backup and DR strategies as well. So here's kind of our content list. We're going to introduce Kellen, of course, and Zadara. I like this slide. What the heck is going on? We're going to talk about my observations and a little bit of my crystal ball about what's going on in the industry. And then we're going to basically listen to some customers, introduce some new technologies called Z Compute, Z Storage, isolation, and so forth. And then the use cases, we're going to talk about repatriation, digital transformation, production and backup, and then USDA and NASA. Kellen says that they're a small company, but boy, they got some big logos. USDA and NASA is a couple of things we're going to talk about. So over to you, Ryan, for a little bit of intro with Kellen Technologies.
Yeah, so Kellen Technologies started almost 10 years ago now with a mission to provide complete services to customers. Our founder had previously worked for specific vendors and was frustrated by only being able to solve a piece of the puzzle. And he's put together a business that is really truly services oriented, and we'll get there in a second. But we aim to remove the nickel and diming and the piece by piecemeal solution set that IT has devolved into over the last few years. Next slide, Doug. Yeah, so we were established in 2011. We are a certified women-owned small business. We call ourselves an MSP, but we do not follow the traditional MSP model. We focus on providing specific services to in-house IT departments. We don't aim to really take over IT in the way that a traditional MSP do. And our bread and butter specialty is backup software and storage as a service, although we do provide other as a service mechanisms. So our big claim to fame and what has earned so much loyalty from our customers is when you are a member of the Kellen family, you gain white glove service through our support team for all the products that we provide you. And that what this essentially is a removal of the professional services drive that a lot of traditional organizations have. If we can help you solve a problem, we will help you solve it. And if we can provide assistance quicker than a vendor can, we are right there. And that includes things like hardware design, expansion. Hey, this feature just dropped. Can you help us figure out if this makes sense to us? Even migration assistance. And we do patching and upgrade assistance if it needs to, but we try to become, for the services we provide, your backline / tier 3 / architecture service, so that you feel that comfort of using a complex product without feeling like you need to dedicate an entire resource to learning that product.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. Every time I see this slide, I think of Kellen and Zadara. We provide a lot of the white glove services as well from a management and a proactive support and things like that. So that's why the marriage between our two companies is so well. I like to do who is Zadara on a single slide, and this kind of tells the story. We're a 10-year-old company, just had our anniversary. We've got 300 plus clouds, 280 petabytes plus installed. And we're basically across the world with about 250 partners, primarily through MSPs and value-added resellers like Kellen. It's funny, when I started with Zadara back in 2011, at the beginning, I had one flag over here in Ashburn, Virginia, and we were basically doing a lot of our business through AWS as what we call cloud adjacent, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But now, if you look at this map over just a quick 10 years, we've really proliferated across the world as well. And I love to focus on this slide, this edge concept, because edge means a lot of these flags were put in the ground in a data center to be closer to the need of the data. So sometimes the hyperclouds just aren't going to work. They're too far away. And we're going to have a whole module on that in just a moment, so stay tuned. But I like to call out this one little flag down here in the Peruvian mountains. We basically had to deliver this thing over dirt roads and so forth. It's a mining operation. And what it does is it backs up all the way up to Flin Flon, Canada. And basically that's also another part of their mining operation. So talk about edge. I mean, we're literally inside a mining community where people they're digging ore and things like this. So this is where cloud services and edge cloud services really does make sense for a lot of customers. Now, you can't be around for 10 years without having a tremendous list. And I'm going to go through some of these. Ryan's going to go through USDA and NASA. I'm going to go through a little bit of Verizon and Ancestry. We're going to go through some stories here today. I love storytelling. That's really the way I like to train. My slides have very few bullets. You're going to basically just sit back and enjoy this. Now, if you've signed up for this session, which of course all of you have, we're going to go ahead and send out the webinar. And we're also going to send out the recording. This is being recorded. So just sit back, listen to the stories. It'll make it a whole lot easier. You don't have to pull out a pencil and a paper too much. So let's talk about the challenges in the industry today. And I call this the what the heck is going on slide. So in this particular case, what we look at is the 5 top things that I talk to customers about. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of you folks on this call today are customers. So you might have gone all into the AWS or Azure cloud. You might have taken your chips and pushed them all in. And it's probably worked out extremely well for you, but there might be some edge conditions or edge cases where you may want to make some changes. We're seeing a lot of what we call repatriation. We're seeing a lot of people that are moving some of their applications back out of the cloud, perhaps, or the public clouds, but into maybe more of a co-location, maybe a data center of their own choosings, maybe into a small cloud or an MSP environment. We're going to talk about how that works, but that really is the number one topic when I poll people. That's the number one topic that I see a lot, is this concept of moving data around between things. How do I model compute and storage as a service? Now, I think it's fair to say that everybody's inbox is full of storage as a service. But I would dare say that compute as a service is probably not as much in your inbox. So when we talk about the large server manufacturers, they're not doing it the same way that storage is. You may end up having to buy it. Maybe there's a finance program, a leasing program, or whatever. But do you pay for cores up and down? Do you pay for memory up and down? Do you pay as you go for what you use for compute? Probably not. So what we want to do is help you move the other 50% of your expenses, the compute part, over to an Opex model. Needing cloud services closer to the source of the data, or we call that edge. Really good example with this mining communities where they needed to move the data closer to where they are today. So we're basically very proud of the fact that we have these 300 plus clouds out there moving closer to the edge. So if you haven't invoked some of the edge concepts because of financial or things like that, that's something we should probably take a look at and talk about. Utilize local partnerships. As soon as you sort of commit to not having to be in 13 different locations across the world, you can start to now enable the teams that you like to work with. You can now not just be a simple number to somebody, you can actually start to call people that you know, that you love, that you connect with, and things like that. They wake up in the morning basically doing things on your behalf. And then needing to keep IT resources current at a reduced cost. Move to new technology when the timing is right. We basically have this notion called storage immortality, where we're going to keep everything fresh and new without a migration cycle, without any of those types of efforts that you might have to make. So I'm going to bring up a polling question. John, my wingman here, if you want to bring up the first polling question about where do people deploy their resources today, I'd appreciate that. So where do you deploy most of your IT resources today? Select one or more, depending on what you got going here. So feel free to enter as many here as you want: hyperclouds, AWS and Azure, MSP locations, on-prem, co-location. Go ahead and please go ahead and fill this in, and we'll go ahead and share the end of this polling here in just a moment. So I'm watching it fill in a little bit, and it looks like it's still moving a little bit, so we'll give everybody their choice. And I think, John, we're done. Let's go ahead and publish that. Okay. So I think there's a way we can publish that. There we go. Perfect. Good job, John. Thank you. So where do you deploy? 67%. Remember, these are not going to add up to 100%. 67% say they have some AWS and Azure, some MSP locations, on-prem 67. That's interesting. Tie for AWS and Azure, and then co-location sites. So that's exactly what I would expect to see that. I would absolutely expect that to be the typical results, where usually on-prem and the hyperclouds is sort of one for one. So, okay, so let's go ahead and take that down and let's keep plowing forward. So enterprise grade cloud services. What I want to do is I want to build a story for you. 3 different pillars, 3 different legs to the stool, if you will. Enterprise grade performance and security, agile infinite resources, pay as you go, and then this expert management piece. So the first thing, we got to lay down a little bit of groundwork here as to some of the keywords that we're going to be using as we move forward. So our business model here at Zadara, our business model was created before the product was ever designed. What that meant was inside our products, we have this DNA that says we want it to be best grade performance, enterprise grade performance and security. So inside, we built the concepts of being able to put different devices, SSDs and hard drives, encryption, snapshots, mirroring, all the things that are sort of table stakes today. We basically need to be able to do that. So we call that fully featured, not only from a storage perspective, but also as a compute perspective, okay? The middle piece says, now this is the DNA part. This is what's inside the genetics of Zadara, is the ability to do it on-prem, co-location, or in the cloud, scale up and down, and have it tell you how much it's using by the hour, have it spit out bills so you can build departments differently than different companies, things like that. Think about what we did back in the early 2011, 2012. We had to run our own MSP, and we had to basically sort out all the hundreds of customers that we had. So we had to have something inside this array that was what we call multi-tenancy, but a single tenant experience, which we're going to talk about. So everything is Opex, of course, in that center tier. And then off to the right, again, part of our genetics is that we have to have this product designed around proactive support, reactive support, the ability to migrate between different things, different ages, different devices, ongoing upgrades, never have the option of taking it down. So the three tiers here is fully featured, fully elastic, and fully managed. And this is going to come to live in the next couple of slides that we'll talk about. So now let's introduce something called Zadara Edge Cloud Services. It's made up of 3 different components: Z Compute, Z Network, and Z Storage. If we focus on Z Compute for a moment in the upper part of this, what we want to do is we want to have a compute as a service, a pay as you go, that will allow you to create things that you're probably familiar with in your AWS environment, perhaps compatibility with EC2, load balancers, elastic block storage for the boot drive, virtual private clouds, all the things that you know and love about Amazon, you'll be able to bring into this environment without a single line code line change. So we're going to talk about this in more detail, but then down below is something we've been doing now for our 10 years, and we call that Z Storage. And all that is the ability to have in one silo, if you will, the block, the file, and the object, all designed to work and perform well together without having to have bolt-on sidecars or this or that or changing this. It was designed to do this right from the start that you're looking at today. So let's take another little deeper look into Z Compute. And then what we're going to do is we're designing some Legos. We're designing the blue Lego and the purple Lego and the green Lego. And now we're going to build a use case when we get to the bottom of this presentation. So stick with me here. Elastic compute, which scales as their business demands change. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the concept of self-provisioning. Now, you may be thinking, well, I got this at VMware, I got this at Hyper-V, I got this at other types of places. The thing here is that we're going to monetize not only the virtual machines, but we're also going to allow you to pay for what you've consumed. So you're only going to pay for the cores and the memory that you're consuming. It's all fully customizable, and you can run standard Microsoft and Linux workloads, of course, or you can basically use your EC2 and your Amazon APIs. What does this do for us is maybe you have applications running in AWS East or West or whatever, but maybe you say, you know, I'd rather have it running in Denver, or I'd rather have it running in Kansas City or Nebraska or wherever. Maybe I can basically move some of those applications that are latency sensitive that I want to be able to do. So we're basically going to take what you love about the hyperclouds and move it closer to the geography, perhaps. We have a lot of case studies, which I'll share at the end here about this particular use case. And again, co-location, private data centers, public cloud, right where you're at today, you know, as well. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to basically allow you to log in to a particular site, and I just have an example of a Z Compute cloud service, and I have it sort of in the AWS East region, but I'm going to allow you to sort of create this Z Compute anywhere that there's a flag out there. Okay, so you're going to basically hit the go button. You're going to create this, and then what's going to happen is, depending on where you've been talking, you're basically going to now have this stack or our stack or Kellen's stack, and you're going to be able to spin up virtual machines based on what you need. So now we have the ability to put Z Compute or compute as a service out in an MSP, and here's Kellen. And we're going to have it in maybe your co-location facility, maybe at your end user co-location that you're using, or it could be on-prem, and you'll be able to put it out there as well. So basically the notion of having a completely Opex as a service compute model anywhere you want to put this. And so again, just defining some Legos and some building blocks. So that's Z Compute, something very novel, something very unique in the industry outside of the hyperclouds. Now let's talk about Z Storage just for a moment. Z Storage, and we're going to build this up. We're going to basically put this all together in one slide for you to look at. Our Z Storage has been called Virtual Private Storage Array, VPSA. And basically what it is our design, again, back in 2011, our design was the ability to do all the media types using hard drives with cache and solid state drives. I just read an article from Seagate, and they said that the death of hard drives and SATA drives is not here yet. They're shipping a whole bunch of hard drives. There's a lot of SATA drives and nearline SASs that are shipping. The world has not converted over to SSD, and our product knew that. Our product was designed around the ability to have a mix for perhaps deep archive, being able to get into the much better price point as well. So you don't have to go all SSD, you don't have to go all hard drives, you can do a mix however you wish. Now let's say that I ship a whole bunch of hard drives because you have an archive mission, and then you come back to me and say, Doug or Ryan, I got it wrong. I need to ship back some of the hard drives and I need to get more SSDs because I've decided to put my database on this. Can I do that without a penalty? And we together say, of course. You don't own anything. This is a service. So how many hard drives don't you need? I don't need 40 of them. Okay, perfect. I'm going to ship you out 40 SSD drives. You're going to basically pull out the 40 hard drives, put in the 40 SSD drives, and now you've changed the way this thing looks and feels based on what your current needs are. 2 months later, you go, well, I think I took too many hard drives out. Can you ship me 20? Of course, this can ebb and flow. It can change however you wish. It was how it was designed to use, not only at the business model, but also at the hardware level. Okay, perfect. Now down the right-hand side, we talked about a little bit earlier, block, file, and object. Block in your data center, Fiber Channel and iSCSI, of course. File, NFS and CIFS. Talk about NASA here in a moment. And then object, both S3 and Swift compatibility. So I can do all this, and then I can basically put it in a colo, in a data center, or in your in a cloud as well. So again, same similar look and feel. Now, if I had you in a classroom, I would say to you at this point in time, I would ask you why Southwest Airlines only flies 737s. And the answer to that is really simple. It's basically commonality. All the pilots are certified with the 737s, the flight attendants. I even like to jokingly say the coffee pot is the same, the jetways is the same. So if I can basically have a common set of tools, technologies, and techniques to allow you to manage all your storage needs and all your compute needs, wouldn't that be better than having basically an NFS filer and a block device and an object device and a hypervisor, all these things that are basically all disconnected that don't share the same common set of tools. So that basically is what we're showing here, is everything that you create is going to have the same look and feel depending on how you do it. Now, as soon as I clicked the go button, so I've created a VPSA, and now I'm going to hit the go button. And this is where I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you folks. So everybody, pick up your coffee, sit back, listen to a little bit of this, is that what the customer here has chosen in the top VPSA is a 400 engine. All that means is that the 400 engine says, I'm going to use out of my software-defined storage stack, I'm going to use 2 cores for an active RAID controller, if you will, or storage area network controller, and I'm going to use 2 cores for standby. So I have active and standby RAID controllers. Okay, everybody should sort of understand that if you've managed or you've worked with storage a bit. I've also selected 4 drives, and those 4 drives are right here. They're physical drives. They're not virtual drives. They're not portions of drives. They're not chunks of a pool. This is 4 physical drives that I'm going to give to this customer. Now let's give this customer a name. Let's call this customer Verizon. So Verizon came to us about 5 years ago and said, first of all, they went to AWS and they said, AWS, if I build my system in your cloud, do you know where my data is? And the answer to that response was, no, we don't. We're in a hyper pool. We might have thousands of drives and your data may be scaled across all these drives. And they said, okay, we can't do business with you. We need to basically have you, if one of these drives fails, we need you to be able to remove it out and ship it to me and shred it. I need to shred this drive so it's dust, so there's no more data here. And if you can't tell me where my drive is or where my data is, then I can't use you. So then they reached out to a service provider and they asked the same question. And the service provider said, no, we use storage arrays that uses this large pool of data. So we can sell you an array and make it dedicated to you, but I can't do it as a multi-tenant environment. And they said, okay, I can't do business with you either. And they came to me at a reInvent show, actually about 5 years ago. This was Verizon again. And they said, do you know where my data is? And I said, of course we do. We assign physical cores. I can tell you the serial numbers of the drives that you own. And they said, interesting. Can I do that in an Amazon cloud? And I said, yes, we will be cloud adjacent. And I'll show you the diagram here in just a moment. We will be cloud adjacent. We will be right next to their cloud, but we will be the enterprise storage device. Well, 5 years later, they've basically been a fabulous customer of ours, and we've been serving a lot of their really important applications that we've been using today. So here's Verizon up here, 4 drives and a 400 engine. Now, right on the heels of that, somebody else goes to a creation screen, and they create something called, I'm going to call it a hybrid. It's hard drives with cache, and they basically have a 400 engine. So they have 4 cores and 2 cores and 2 cores, active and standby. And now they have 10 drives, and those are dedicated to them, but they're of the SATA type using SSD cache. So now that's probably good for file shares or NFS or CIFS or things like that. And then down on the bottom, we have another customer that comes in and they say, I would like to do this in object storage. I want object storage. I'm going to select 6 drives and I'm going to do that. So can this be in your data center? Of course. Can this be in the hyperclouds? Yes. Can this be in a managed service environment? Absolutely. Can I basically have file, block, and object? Can I have different drives here? Yes. We call this, makes sense now, multi-tenant architecture. This is a multi-tenancy, but everybody has a single tenant experience. And the single tenant experience is everybody basically has an air gap around their storage area network, if you will, or your RAID device, whatever you want to call it. We have that. We have the same concept with our Z Compute. So basically between the two, neither of the two shall meet. And we now have the ability to tell. And if you're a government customer on the line here and you want to make sure that your data isn't, your drives aren't maybe multi-tenant shared across multiple constituents or multiple folks, then this may be the pattern that you've been looking for. So now if I take this Z storage or VPSAs, well, it makes sense now. You're starting to get smart on this. It makes sense that now I can put it in a service provider, I can put it in a colo, and I can put it in an on-prem environment. Now, I've also introduced something new here. This is called Direct Connect, Express Route, Partner Interconnect. These are those hyperclouds that I've been speaking about. And what we do is we set up shop right down the street from the AWS or Azure clouds, right down the street, 1 millisecond away. And so now I can use their branded product, Direct Connect in the case of Amazon, and I can now provide this single tenant experience at the storage level, but I can also keep my compute perhaps running in AWS because maybe it's established. Maybe that's what you like. Maybe that's where you want to keep it. But I'm going to give you options. Watch what happens right now. Is if I add Z Compute to all these facilities, whether it be in your data center or whatever, now I have much more choices. Here, I can run my entire environment on an Opex model. I can run my entire model down here, Opex pay as you go, only never pay for what you don't use. And then over here in cloud adjacent land or in a co-location, I can maybe start to move some applications from AWS up to Z Compute, if it makes sense. Does it make sense from a cost perspective? Does it make sense for a lot of different things? Okay. So that really is the model that we're talking about here. John, I'm going to bring up the next polling question, if you don't mind. And the next polling question, when he gets that ready, is what percentage of your IT budget today is Opex and monthly subscription? So here you can only select one. Doesn't make sense to answer it more than one, of course. And so we'll watch some of this. I'm watching some of the results come in. It's still moving around a little bit. This is interesting. I did this poll last week. I'm seeing a little bit different behavior here. Everybody seems to be still out there, attentive to what we're talking about here, Ryan, so that's a good thing. Starting to settle in. All right, I'm going to give it just another 20 seconds. Tick-tock, seems like things are moving around a little bit. All right, it's funny. It's kind of changing back to where I kind of expected. Okay, go ahead and close down the poll, John, and let's go ahead and publish that. So what I had seen is I had seen a huge influx of 76 to 100%, and then I saw it starting to settle back to 26 to 50. That's where I normally see it, is anywhere between the 25 and 50% mark. People aren't all in into the into the 100%. Typically, people have a little bit of everything, and that's good. That's exactly what we want to see happen. Nobody, I think, is going to get to 100% Opex right away. So let's go ahead and shut down that poll, and let's keep moving forward here. Excellent. Now we're going to start to take some of what we've learned, and we're going to start to put it into some of the cases that we want to. So summary on this is basically you can do as a service, you can do both storage and compute, and you can do it in any data center you wish. Government customers out there, we know where your data is, you know where your departments are. That was one of the big selling features for both NASA and USDA. Okay, your day-to-day experience with Zadara, just before we get into the use cases, is our availability, if you will. If you notice in the diagram, the multi-tenancy architecture, you remember that we had storage nodes, we had cores, we had redundant drives, we had RAID, we had all those things. So our SLA, when we designed this product, we said we better be getting 99.999. I just saw a number that Amazon was touting 4 nines of availability on some of their EFS, I think it was, their file systems, about 4 nines. 4 nines and 5 nines, hopefully it doesn't make a big difference in what you're doing, but there is some outages in the Amazon side. We're basically, our SLA is this, but we're actually seeing over the last 10 years of usage, we're actually seeing closer to 6 nines of availability. But if we do have any type of issue, we basically provide 100% credit basis of our SLA. So that's very, 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 very nice to just know that we're going to lead this SLA with our financial chops here as well. Now, I love this slide. I was up in Salt Lake City. Again, I love stories. I was up in Salt Lake City and basically was talking to a customer, and I said, "Hey, Bob, why am I here?" And he said, "Well, I own about 500 terabytes of network appliance." I said, "Okay, that's fine. That's good." I said, "Why am I here?" And he said, "I'm only using about 250 terabytes of it." I said, "All right, so you bought 500 with hard-earned cash. You're only using 250. Okay. Now, so again, why am I here?" And they said, "Well, it's 4 years old, and they're requiring that I do an upgrade because it's starting to get end of life, and I need to basically put in another 500 terabytes." I said, "So you bought 500, you're only using 250, you're going to upgrade to another perhaps 500, and there's 250 you've never used." He said, "That's why you're here." And I said, "Okay, had we met 4 years ago, I would have put maybe 300 terabytes out there, maybe 350, but only charged you for the 250 you're using. And if you started to approach the 350 that I had on site, I would have automatically shipped more devices, more spindles, more storage nodes, so we accomplish or accommodate the influx of data that you have. If you lose some business, perhaps maybe something changes. Maybe if you were in the media and entertainment and you're creating a movie which takes lots and lots of data, but once you go to publish the movie, it drops down. We're going to track the usage curve of what you're constantly using. You never own it. It's never CapEx. It's always what we see you using. Now, the blue one is actual usage, and the yellow one is what we're going to charge. And if anybody can basically think about why would this yellow line go down, basically going basically cheaper for the same usage here. And the answer to that question would be what we call refresh on your timeline, not ours. So here we're saying, here's the timeline of hard drives and solid state drives. So I have customers today, Ancestry is a good example. They've gone from hard drives to SSDs, and now we've been putting on bigger, more dense spindles. They started on 4 terabyte drives, and now they're basically on these 8 terabyte drives down here for SSDs. So as they consume more data and the drives are more dense, I'm going to basically be able to return a savings back to that customer. So one of the number one topics that customers are talking about is this concept of being able to upgrade and refresh their technology before or being able to refresh it before they basically know they need it. We're going to keep everything fresh and new, and we're going to keep moving those things forward. So in this case, if you do something today with Zadara and Kellen, and tomorrow a new spindle comes out, and you think you need that in 6 or 9 months, we'd be happy to put in the new spindle, and we'll basically pull out the old ones and redeploy them somewhere else. So that's really what makes this yellow line go down, is theoretically your costs could go down as new spindles. So usually new spindles means heartbreak for people. In this case, new spindles, denser spindles means no heartbreak at all. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and put up another polling question, John. We're in good shape time-wise. We got some nice time for our use cases here. I hope everybody's enjoying this. So let's go ahead. Of today's topics, what's the most challenging for you folks? And you can select one or more of these as well. Migrating between clouds and co-location, designing an Opex model that works for me, needing as a service IT solutions closer, like an edge, and how do I upgrade my infrastructure like we just talked about. So let's basically talk about these 4 questions and what tends to be the kind of the fly in the ointment, I guess, between you folks out there today. And I see everybody's back to their mouse. Everybody's clicking, and that's great. Interesting results coming in. It's a horse race. Everybody finishing up. Couple more changes. And I think that's good right there, John. Go ahead and close it down. Let's publish that. So of the people answering this poll of today's topics, what's the most challenging? Everybody had some challenges out there today. Migrating data between clouds and co-location and on-prem. I'm going to come back to that question in just a moment. I kind of glossed over something quickly. Designing an Opex model that works for me, that's interesting. About 50% is really trying to get this Opex model working for them. Need an IT service. That's interesting. 33% need something closer to the edge. And then how do I upgrade my infrastructure without downtime? That's about 50% of the folks. So let's go ahead and take that one down, John. Thank you so much for playing my polling games here. I'm going to go back up and I'm going to look at this slide right here, folks. I want to talk about multi-cloud just for a quick moment. So multi-cloud to me says, let's say that I have AWS and Azure, and I have my storage in what we call cloud adjacent. Cloud adjacent said I can mount this storage over here, the Z storage, to both Amazon and Azure in parallel. I can actually run this with NFS or CIFS, and I can do record locking across 2 different hyperclouds. Or let's say that I'm at AWS and I want to move to Azure. I may have to pay to export this and then bring it into Azure. If I was going to do that, there'd be huge egress fees to be able to do that, perhaps. But because the data is already cloud adjacent out here, all I have to do is change the mount points from AWS to Azure. I don't have to move a single bit of data. I can basically just move between clouds, use clouds independently, use them collaboratively together, bring in a little bit of Z compute. It solves a lot of the problems that you folks may be thinking about as we move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and go through a couple of use cases, and then I'm going to bring Ryan back up again. VMware liberation, I call this, into these environments. Let's say that you're running some VMware over here, and you're running maybe an EMC VNX. I don't know what you have over here, but maybe the hardware is coming up on lease, or maybe you need to do a refresh, or I know you're probably under subscription based for the VMware licenses, but maybe you want to. You folks that answered, I'm struggling to get an all Opex model. Maybe I want to move this over so I can use Commvault, which is one of the marquee software products that Ryan uses, and he'll talk about that a little bit with NASA and USDA. But let's say I want to move the data over to a Z storage environment. I want to move my compute over here, and I don't care where it is, whether it's in your data center or wherever it happens to be. And then we can start to turn on replication. One of the things that we talked about bringing you folks into these seats here today was primarily the backup and the DR piece. And now we're going to introduce a few more concepts here for you. You can see how this is building. Our Lego model is starting to take shape. So here, we basically could do this all in Kellen facilities. We could do it in your facility over to a secondary site. The storage arrays themselves had mirroring built in. So it's a homogeneous type of mirroring solution. We have the ability, you can crank this up. Let's say it's a DR. These can be $0 over here until maybe something happens in your data center, and then you basically on demand crank up the Z compute, and now you mount it up to the Z compute, the storage. This is already, the RPO on this might be an hour. The recovery time objective might be 10 or 15 minutes to get established. And in very little time, very little extra dollars, you've now been able to create a secondary DR site, and you're all in to an Opex model. We don't have to worry about licensing costs, the vendor logins, or anything like that, a cloud-like experience. And it's remember reminding us that it's AWS compatible as well. So there's use case number one, is maybe moving over. Again, these are options, whatever you wish. Now, here I have a company that is doing security events. Every time you log into your computer, if you have this service, they would basically verify that you are the person that you say you are. So they needed to run around 60,000 concurrent security events, which we got them in the Amazon environment. We got them to 60,000 concurrent access. But they said, Doug, I want to grow this to 100,000, and the latency is starting to hurt me because you're cloud adjacent. I basically love your performance here, but because I got to get through Direct Connect, that might be an impediment. Not typically an impediment for most people, but maybe a little bit of an impediment for them that needed this huge number of 60,000 and growing. They wanted to have linear scale. They wanted to have sub-millisecond latency. So they wanted to be in the high microseconds is there. And they didn't want to migrate this. They really had a minimal budget, and they didn't want to migrate this over. So all we did was we basically cranked up some Z Compute in Ashburn, Virginia. They basically remounted their data set from here over to the Z Compute. Now they're in the sub-millisecond latency. It's all basically a Z Compute, Z Storage, Zadara Edge Cloud environment, and we were able to do that pretty much in an afternoon. So what made this easy is the data was already here. If your data isn't already there, then we may need to certainly do some migration services, which Ryan and his team, one of his slides, was more than anxious to help you with. I'm going to call this Edge Digital Transformation. Here we have a customer, and it could be any application that needs to be close to a particular edge, if you will. And in this case, I'm going to bring up a customer that is scanning in microfilms into some storage, or let's say it's on the West Coast. And they basically want to process that somewhere else. In this case, I'm going to say it's in Amazon on the East Coast. That's where their infrastructure is. Or maybe it's in Denver and they want to move it over here. Wherever it happens to be, it doesn't matter. So we're going to basically provide the as a service edge solution here on the edge over here. So they're going to continue to scan. That's where the people are. That's where the infrastructure is. That's where the microfilm is. And then we're going to basically mirror that over to here, and they're going to be able to then create the derivatives. We're going to be able to do character optimization and character recognition. We're going to be able to create these real documents. And then this company, they actually use it out of an S3 bucket. So they actually distribute this data, these forms, marriage licenses and medical records and things. They do all this through an S3 environment. So basically we import, we move it over to the edge, and then we basically process it the traditional way. So we really haven't had to rock too much of their process at all. They still love their EC2, which is fine. They still want our Z storage, and they're doing that. So if you have a kind of an edgy type of digital transformation, we may want to talk a little bit more about that. Backup and DR as a service. We talked a little bit about that, but here we have customers that are basically the customer data center on the left, the customer data center on the right, and basically we have the Kellen environment perhaps in the center. So this works extremely well, not only for backup, but also DR, as you would expect. So I basically have my compute over here, as much or as little as I need. My compute over here, again, as much or as little as I need. And now I have my storage that can basically be mirrored into here. Now, this is kind of interesting. Let's talk about this for a moment. Let's say that this is running the business. Let's say I'm a web-based company that's selling things online. So this is running my business, but then what I want to do is I want to mirror the data over to here, and this is where maybe I do analytics, I do other types of things in infrastructure over here in the Kellen facility. Perhaps I mirror it over, and then I do my rich data mining or my analytics or all those kind of things that I want to do over in this environment. It sort of removes the handcuffs from the ability to move things around, which some of 50% said this was difficult. So we're going to move things around. We're going to give this whole model is an as a service model to be able to build this up. Again, our folks at Kellen, Ryan, would love to talk to you about some of these models here. Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you. You want to spend some minutes on USDA and then NASA?
Absolutely. Thank you, Doug. So we have a couple of examples for you guys for times that we've used Kellen and our services to really solve some pinch points with our customers. One of them is USDA. So USDA was struggling with their backup infrastructure and not wanting to have to kind of see the crystal ball in the future about how much back-end space they're going to use, because that depends on how much front-end space you're going to use and your dedupe ratios and all these information that I'm sure you've all been asked for to provide, and most of you have just guessed. Because I can tell you I've pretty much always just guessed, because it's very difficult to make it deterministic. And so what we did is we came in, and this is actually before Z-Compute existed. So we're delivering the storage for the back end using a Zadara system. So the customer is ultimately only paying for the storage they use. And also delivering compute as a service for running this system, so that the system dynamically sizes and shrinks based on how much they use. And this is an excellent example where Z-Compute makes a lot of sense, is that we had to do that ourselves. And that's not true anymore. We can now put that all on a single platform for the customers or for us, depending on how it's packaged, and deliver a true as a service on-prem model for IT service consumption with an easy and direct billing model. So the nice thing about this is that while we're delivering this service primarily via Commvault for backups, the VPSA is there, and in the contract is the ability for them to start using it for NAS or SAN use. The equipment is there, it's ready to be used, and they're not paying anything for that capability until they actually decide to turn it on. And so when such time comes as they are outgrowing an on-prem storage array, they now have the option of just turning on 50 terabytes of Zadara storage without having to go procure 500 terabytes of an array from another vendor, because that's the sizing that makes the most sense. And there's all that complexity is gone. And that's really kind of shows the benefits. What's drawn so many people into hyperclouds is the ability to just use what I need. And if I need a new service, I just go click that service on. I don't have to go through vendor selection and procurement and all of that kind of stuff that goes on when you're looking at doing a large on-prem capital acquisition. This has been very successful for them. Now their backups are handled by us using Commvault. We deliver that as a service, including full management, and they just give us a list of systems that they expect to be protected and the SLAs they'd like on that, and we take it away. It is no longer their concern. They put a ticket in for a restore, their data is restored, and it really lets us, as the specialist, use our knowledge of the backup and recovery environment to deliver the best service to them possible, because ultimately backup and recovery is complex, just like storage is complex. There are very few services in the DR storage backend world that doesn't require an intimate knowledge with the domain you're working on to deliver a good service. Next slide.
There we go.
And so we've done the same thing a little bit different with NASA. So NASA, we actually have 3 sites online with them. The first one was used to replace a heavy NFS CIFS environment, and they had actually really adapted their workload for the capabilities of the previous array. And this is a really excellent example of where Zadara steps up to the plate to make sure that their customers are happy. When they first moved on to the Zadara platform, they found a bunch of features that weren't there. And this was not the fault of the Zadara platform. They were features that, it turns out, were only available from their previous vendor that they selected over 10 years ago and is barely a player in the market anymore. And Zadara recognized that this is an area they can't just say, they're never going to be the ones that just say, well, just tough, we didn't support that. They sat down with development and the customer and got those features deployed into their environment in a fairly rapid manner. And this is the big flexibility of consuming things as a service. Now the vendor is 100% invested in your success. It's not just a sale and moving on. And with the complexity of modern IT environments, I think that's a service that we at Kellen have found a lot of benefit to our customers, and that really it's baked into doing things as a service. And that's the responsibility that Zadara and Kellen, we try to bring that you don't get out of a hypercloud. If there's a feature missing in AWS, there's not even someone you can talk to. You can basically post on a forum and hope somebody pays attention. And that's not true when you do maintain that relationship with a direct vendor. And so the other sites that are using Zadara at this location, actually were struggling with performance on a legacy hybrid array, where the government oversight came down and said, we have to run these jobs on these file shares every Friday, and every Friday that storage would crash and would bring down multiple VMs. And they went to the original vendor and they said, hey, we need to do that. And they said, well, I've got a bigger array for you. Let's just get rid of that old one. I'll come in, we'll land a fancier one with more compute and have more IOPS. And they weren't really that excited about it because, number one, it was very expensive. And number two, they were getting rid of all this equipment they had before that was serving 90% of their workload, but wasn't able to do the extra 10%. And so we brought in a VPSA and actually deployed 2 VPSAs, one of which was all flash, and met that performance workload that was mandated to them, and they can size that up and size that down as it's needed. And as they migrate workloads to other areas or to other things, they can tailor the performance of that system directly. I also wanted to take a second to talk in that last poll. The number one answer that everyone was struggling was migrating between premise and clouds. This is actually an area that we at Kellen Technologies have spent a lot of time working on and helped a lot of customers optimize their data locations, both via repatriation of data out of the clouds or moving data into clouds or moving data between sites. And one of the things we've seen a lot of Commvault in this presentation that's there because Kellen Technologies is a part of this webinar. We do a lot of work with Commvault, and we do it because they support things around on-prem and cloud migrations that no other vendor does. And it's really, really powerful when you're dealing with that with the struggle of where to put your data, to be able to take that data and back it up out of Azure into AWS, or restore a VM from on-prem into AWS or AWS into on-prem. And now with Zadara bringing Z Compute online, now you can also take that data directly out of AWS and copy it cloud adjacent into a Z Compute execution environment and get it even closer to your data set without egress charges. It's a really powerful capability that we never want to put customers in a place that they feel trapped with a specific provider on the back end, because what a provider supplies is never the same, and they're always going to develop at different rates, and the answer for your business may not always be this provider you chose 4 years ago. So I know we're running a little short on time, so I'm going to go ahead and give this back to Doug, but thank you so much.
Great stories. Thank you so much. I've got a couple of questions that came in. So the first question I have from one of the folks is, how long will it take to install Zadara Cloud Services if I choose to? And let's just focus on this left-hand panel here. If you wanted to put in Z Compute and Z Storage, from the point that we know that you want to put it in, and we get through some of the really light business pieces of this, as Ryan said, you pay next to nothing until you start to use it. But if you want to identify a site, we're anywhere between 30 and 40 days to be able to install a given site. So basically, it's very, very easy, a very easy lift to be able to do that. You just need some rack space, of course, and some available power. The second question I have is, can I have different levels of storage or different devices for my production and my DR? And the answer is, inside these VPSAs, these could be solid state drives. And over here, I could be backing up using Commvault to object storage, to maybe SATA drives or nearline SAS drives, maybe a factor of 3 or 4 less expensive than perhaps production. So being able to go from a performance tier to a archive or a backup tier is very, very easy. So thank you for those questions.
And if I can add on that real quick, Doug,
Please.
The great thing about having Zadara there is that if you are usually using a slower performance tier at your DR location and you do have to fail over to that as production, you can back-end migrate the data from those SAS or nearline SAS disks onto flash with a single click. And you just at that moment start paying for the flash disks until you manage to bring the workload back onto on-prem, and then you can demote that data again.
That's a perfect segue into that. Exactly right, because the concept of RPO and RTO, it's kind of I've been talking about RPO and RTO for probably the better part of 25 years with backup. You know that those concepts just won't go away. Recovery point objective, how much data are you willing to lose? And recovery time objective, how long does it take to bring your environment back up again? And as Ryan just said, RPO, recovery point objective, the data's there, it's ready to go. But I may have to do some migration, but I can mount this. I can get the proprietary or the really high priority applications back up and going very, very quickly. So what we said we were going to learn today is we were going to migrate and learn how to migrate and create some Legos here. How do we model compute and storage as a service? Needing cloud services closer to the source, even though edge wasn't one of the things that you folks needed out of the chutes here. Certainly something that probably will be a part of your discussions down the road. Utilize any MSP and then keep IT fresh and new. Now, Ryan has got a really cool thing here. You want to talk a little bit about the schedule a call and the audits?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we're offering as part of this webinar is a 30-minute technical consultation with any one of your team that you want to talk about. And I stress that this is a technical consultation. So we will have our engineers on the line, and it's a free-form discussion on any kind of these cloud migration, hybrid deployment, edge computing kind of conversations you want to have. And it's not a sales conversation. And so what we'll do is 30 minutes, if it goes over 30 minutes, that's fine. But we really want to give you the opportunity to ask us questions and understand where the IT marketplace is moving as it relates to your specific business. And so this link that's on the page, if you go there, you can choose any time that you want. It goes directly to me and my technical team. And we would love to be able to have a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm. So write it down right now. You will get this presentation, but if you want to do this quicker than later, kellentech.com/Zadara, and it'll bring up. I tested this to put some of these slides together. It's really cool. It just brings up this automated calendar system, and you can just put in your name and contact, and they'll be getting back to you. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining. This has been a great opportunity to get in front of some of you folks to talk about what I think is pretty exciting technology, some new, very novel technology. If you have any questions, please, you can reply to the Zadara.com. You can basically send things over that way, and we'd be happy to talk. But primarily, Kellen, this is the way you're going to get through to us, and this is how we're going to do this. So thanks again for your time, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much, Ryan, for adding a lot of color and talking about Kellen.
And thanks, Doug.